Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Amanda.
And we're your hosts.
We're a traveling couple and digital nomads taking you on our adventures as we explore locations, destinations, and careers.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the World Wanderers podcast. I'm really excited that you're joining us for today's episode of the show. And today on the podcast, I'm really excited to be joined by Hannah Dixon. Hannah is a virtual assistant, or VA, and freelance coach, recruiter, and the founder of Digital Nomad Kit. She's committed to creating a more equitable future through the freedom and accessibility of freelancing, and her teachings have readied over 27,000 learners in over 170 countries to work with leading entrepreneurs across all industries. With 15 years as a full-time digital nomad, her insights are highly sought after, contributing regularly to publications like Business Insider and Forbes, and delivering global talks on her areas of expertise. In this episode of the podcast, Hannah shares a bit about her travel story and how she got into working as a VA, why she created Digital Nomad Kit, why becoming a VA is a great career for travelers and digital nomads, tips for getting started as a VA, and much more. She shares so much good stuff, and I just really appreciated how open she was and how willing she was to share, tips for those of you who are wanting to work remotely but maybe don't know what your skills or your passions are or how you can apply those online. She's got lots of tips and tricks for that, especially related to the world of being a virtual assistant. So I hope that you enjoy this episode, and without further ado, here is Hannah. Hannah, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. And it's actually kind of fun for me because usually I have to share the mic with Ryan, and I'm excited to not have to do that today.
Get to hug it.
Yeah, I get to ask all the questions I want to ask. Can you share with listeners where you're joining us from?
Yes, I'm in Puerto Vallarta right now in Mexico.
Amazing. And where are you from originally?
I grew up in the UK. I'm an American citizen and living here in Mexico now.
Okay, that's cool. I feel like we need to get into all things that, plus, how you ended up in Mexico and all the things you do. But maybe let's back up and talk about, your kind of introduction to travel. Can you share a little bit about your, travel origin story, you could say?
Yeah, sure. So when I was, I want to say 15, I think, I was in the UK and I was leaving for the school holidays. You get 6 weeks in the UK. And my teacher said to me, I must have been 16. I think I was 16. And my teacher, who was like a great mentor to me, I was like, the nerdy bullied kid who stayed with a teacher at lunchtime. So I was always with this teacher. And she said, what are you going to do for the holidays? I said, well, I don't know, maybe get a weekend job or something. And she said, you can get a passport and travel if you want. You can go around Europe. And I was like, what? Oh my God, I can get a passport and I can go on my own to Europe. So I did. I got my passport and I did one of those interrail trips around Europe. And that was the beginning of a lifelong journey, really. It kind of just sparked something in me that just rang so true. I left school. I didn't go to university. I started traveling. Long story, very short, got into a very abusive relationship, which also then helped me propel back out into the world traveling because my escape was literally getting onto the road, something I wanted to do anyway. So it just came easier. And I started my journey with work exchanges. So working on bars, farms, hostels. I worked with husky dogs for a long time in Austria. So that's kind of how I sustained my travel in the beginning days, the beginning years, really. And that's really it. Yeah. It's kind of my entire adult life has been traveling.
Yeah. I mean, even your late teens, which is so cool to have this introduction of hey, I could go do this thing and then just fall in love with it and do it basically for the rest of your life, which is really cool. And you kind of talked about doing the work and travel thing, but maybe in a way that we kind of had to do it, I guess, at this point. There wasn't remote work as much at that point. I'm curious, at what point did you kind of discover remote work, the ability to work online?
So I actually was in Italy at the time that everything changed for me. I was working on a construction site because I clearly know a lot about construction. And I got invited to a party in Milan with friends that I'd worked with. I'd worked in fashion for 1 year back in London. And I had friends in Milan who went to this fancy party and they invited me. And I showed up with plaster and cement all over my clothes. And I was like, it would be really nice to have some money because I couldn't afford to buy clothes for this party. So I went back to the UK to get a real job, the whole thing that everyone was telling me to do. And I did. I got a job in a bar for a couple of months. And then I met somebody who was working online. And the only thing, I didn't even own a laptop at the time, but the only thing I heard was, hold on a second, you work on the internet from home. That means you can do that from anywhere, right? I was like, so I can keep traveling. So I was like, please tell me everything you know. And she did. And we founded our first company together. She was a web developer and SEO expert. And I didn't even know what those words meant at the time, but I was like, just teach me. Like, I'll jump in, I'll do what I can. And that's kind of how we did things. Turned out that these clients also needed more than just websites. They needed social media management. They needed inbox management. They needed travel booking. They needed all these kinds of things that I was learning on the go. And it wasn't until somebody said to me or referred to me on a team call as their virtual assistant, I was like, oh, there's a name for this. It's what I'm doing. So that was my introduction. It was messy. It was like, I didn't know what I was doing. I bought my first laptop and I figured it out. And it took a couple of years, but turned out to be pretty successful in the end.
Yeah. And just for context, what year was that?
I want to say 2013-ish, 2012, maybe.
Okay, cool. And at that point, how long had you been, like, how long it had been where you'd been like working and traveling, like doing
about 5 years.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So you started traveling, I guess I'm just trying to do math in my head, since like 2007-ish?
2007, 2008. Yeah. Yeah. I don't have a very strict timeline on my, I'm like not good at keeping track, but I've been traveling for 15 years.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think it's really interesting. Like we started traveling in 2011 when we graduated from university. And that was the first time we met somebody who was like working online. We were at a hostel in Switzerland and he was a programmer. And I remember we were like, wait, you're like doing work from this hostel. You're not Swiss. Like, what? Like, is this even a thing? Because like 2011 is like not that long ago, but it's also a completely different world when you think about technology. Like, I think we were traveling with like one iPad between us. Like we left our cell phones at home. We would literally like screenshot from like Hostel World, the directions. We'd screenshot the directions from the email. So we had them on the iPad and then we would just like follow them. And we had like Lonely Planet books that we like looked up.
Oh God, yeah, I remember those.
I'm like, how different is 2011 travel to like 2023? Like, I feel like people starting out now are like, you did what? Like,
I know, it's completely transformed. I think about that. I think about before I traveled, even before any technology. I remember traveling to Thailand on my own with no technology and like a physical map. Like it's wild to think about now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just like such a different landscape, but it's cool to hear that you were doing like online work. I mean, way before pandemic. I feel like Ryan and I started in like 2015, 2016-ish, and that felt like very pre-pandemic working online, and you're even before that. So I'm curious for you at that point, like what was it like to find these VA jobs? What was it like to find online opportunities?
I don't know that it was much trickier than it is now or much easier than it is now, but it was different in the way that, you know, the communities were smaller, I found. So sometimes it was actually easier to find work in some ways. But then there were so many new people coming into the space that there was this real competitive thing that I don't think exists anymore, because now I feel like there's this, everybody can find a space for themselves. There's so many people that are open to hiring remote workers, hiring freelancers, and there's so many things that you can hire them for that there's really a space for everyone to make something. Whereas before it was kind of like, do you offer social media design? Do you offer this? Do you offer not social media design, social media management and web design? And it was a little bit more rigid, I find. So in that way, like if you didn't quite fit what people wanted, the competition was higher, I feel. But there was more space to stand out if you were building a personal brand, which is what I moved into and sort of started to build a company around what I was doing. And I think that's what really took me from sort of getting by to flying high. Sorry for the cliche, but yeah, I think that building a brand around it and then starting to build a community around it, people were craving community, I feel, at that time. That's really what took me from, you know, being a virtual assistant to training virtual assistants, was through having this community that I'd built at the time. I don't know how it was for you, but I feel like when I got started, I didn't know what a digital nomad was. You know, I'd only recently found out what a virtual assistant was. And when it dawned on me that there was this term digital nomad, and there were other people out there doing it, I was searching for information, you know, like give me information, like trying to get everything I could. And it was very much like one demographic that we saw. It was like the young white man in Chiang Mai. And I was like, that doesn't really relate to me. And there's got to be other people out here doing this that, like, you know, other women, queer people, people of color. There's got to be people out here doing this. So I started a community myself because I'm like, well, I'll just start my own thing. And I did. And that's kind of where everything grew from there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I feel like I can definitely relate to that in some senses. Like, I feel like it may be a bit different because I was sort of like, oh, it seems like there's a lot of computer programmers or a lot of people who are like, I don't know, not really working. And I don't know if they're living off trust funds or like, you know, people are doing like things with the stock market. And I'm like, I don't have enough money to like throw it all at the stock market and hope I get some money back. Like, I don't get what people are doing. And I feel like it was kind of like, hey, I need some just like people like you and I who we're down to work, we're down to hustle, but we want to do it on the internet. Like, how do we figure out how to do that? And I feel like in the beginning for us, it was like, okay, how can we convince people to do these jobs online? Like that we don't have to be here in person for these types of roles, and just doing a lot of stuff to kind of make it work, which I feel like I'm kind of like hearing you say that you did as well. Like just a lot of different kind of piecework to kind of like, you know, pay the bills until you figured out something that can help you thrive a little more.
Absolutely. Definitely in the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious. Can you talk us through like the shift of, I guess, being a virtual assistant and maybe working for a bunch of people, you know, making enough money to do the thing, which feels so good at first, and then being like, okay, it's time to step it up and starting to build your own brand, your own business, your own community?
Yeah, I think for me, I got to a stage, for context, the first ever job I took on it wasn't Upwork, but it was one of those, you know, gig platforms. It was the first thing I took on, and it was $5. And it was for an article called the top 26, random number, top 26 cities to raise children in the United States. And I was like, I'm such an expert on this. But it took me 3 days of exactly living in all these cities. Yeah. So it took me 3 days of research and a lot of work, and I delivered it. And there was an option to tip me, and they didn't tip me. And I was kind of like, are you kidding? Like $5 for 3 days of work. So that was the first sort of like, I need to make this sustainable. This can't work like this. There's got to be another way. There's people out there doing this. So I've just got to find how. So I was seeking clients in different places and that kind of thing, and getting clear on my service stack and that kind of thing. But then as things grew, as I built that community, more out of a need for me wanting to connect with more people, my success started really taking off. And that was through a few things. I think it was through, I had mentorship, I'd invested in programs, I was building my network a lot. And if I'm quite frank, I think a lot of it was quite intuitively. I'm good at public relations. It's something I've always made sure I was in media, podcasts, getting in the news, that kind of thing. So that all, elevated my position. And it got to a point where I was earning a minimum of $5,000 a month, every single month. And then sometimes 10,000 with short-term projects as well that I was taking on. And when I was sharing what was happening for me in my business in this community, people began asking me like, what? I want to see that kind of success. How are you doing this? And it hadn't occurred to me that people might want to learn from me. I'd never gone into this thinking I want to train people in this. But there appeared to be this need. And so around this time, I was just like, I don't know how to help people. I've never been in a position where I'm training or teaching, but I'll try, I'll try something. And so I threw together this 5-day challenge, which I still run to this day, funnily enough. It's transformed over the years, and it's got better and better.
You have one coming up soon, don't you?
I do, on the 17th, yes. So I threw this together, and I put it out there, and I did each day as it came. So like day one, I was like, right, so what would you do on the day one of being a virtual? You would do this. Day two, what would you do? And I kind of just did it in the moment with people, and like invited people in to kind of make it a collaborative sort of effort. And it worked. At the end of the week, like a bunch of people got jobs. I was like, from like having no experience to getting jobs. And I was like, maybe I know some stuff. Maybe I've learned some cool stuff that I can pass on. And that was really the very sort of humble beginnings. I didn't anticipate doing this. And skip forward to today, we've trained 30,000 people, and we're one of the leading virtual assistant training organizations in the world. So, I mean, I guess it was the right path to take.
Yeah. I mean, that's congratulations. That's amazing. It's amazing that you've been able to serve so many people. And it's really cool. Like, I think there's a lot of people who kind of look at, people like us who are not from Mexico, living in Mexico. We get to like have great climate, we get to eat great food. And they say like, how can I do that? And I think it's really amazing to be able to be like, hey, I can actually teach you like what I did, and you can replicate it in a way that like serves you and your business, which is super cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like one of the things I really love about what you're doing in your business is like one of the things we found when we started is as we were doing research kind of in, I guess, maybe like 2014, 2015, that kind of time where we were like, okay, how could we keep traveling in a more sustainable way, like make money on the road? I feel like so much of it was like people in the travel industry. So travel bloggers, travel YouTubers, I guess travel podcasters. Podcasting wasn't that big at that point, but there was like a few people doing it. People doing like travel tours, travel agents, travel photographers, that type of thing. I feel like that's where we thought we're like, we love travel. So maybe we should create something within travel. And I think it's really cool that even early on, you created something that's like, it allows you to travel and create this lifestyle, but it's not necessarily travel related.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I really like about the career in general, the VA career, is that you can take your interests, even if they're not, professionally aligned, and you can kind of weave that into your work. If you're really into yoga, you can be working with people who have online yoga courses. If you're really into, I don't know, cheeseburgers, you could do menus for burger. Like there's so many things that you could do by taking your interest and bringing them forward. So it doesn't need to just be related to travel anymore. It can be, you can bring you to the table, which I think is beautiful.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want to get into like VA more specifically and why this is a really great career. But before we do that, I'm kind of curious, like as you were doing all of this, like building your business and just working online, where were you traveling to? Like, were you kind of all over the world? What was kind of your rhythm at that point?
So the first few years before I was working online, it was mostly around Europe, just for ease and costs, really. Being in the UK, it was much easier to hop around there. Over the years, I've spent a lot of time in Bangkok, Thailand. It is like my favorite city in the whole world. I did spend around 3 years, not all at the same time, but sort of like over a 4 or 5 year period, 3 years in and out of Sardinia, Italy. And just more recently, I kind of sort of base myself on a continent and then travel around, if that makes sense. So right now I'm based in Mexico and I'm traveling around, but a lot of places. I mean, I stopped counting at 58, so maybe 60 countries, 61 countries, something like that. But the longest periods I've spent have been in Bangkok, Budapest, Sardinia, and now Mexico.
Okay, awesome. Very cool. Amazing. Let's get into some more details about VA work, because I think this is really cool. Like I said before, it's like an opportunity for, I think, so many people with so many skills. Why do you feel like this is like a great career for somebody who might want to be a digital nomad or even just like work remotely?
Well, for a few reasons. I think one, the barrier to entry is pretty low. You don't necessarily need a formal education to move into this work. Even sometimes resumes become a little bit irrelevant. It's more about having a portfolio and demonstrating that you can do what you say you can do. And I think it's important to note as well that there's sometimes this misconception that virtual assistants do really techie work, or and some do, absolutely they do. But the categories of work really fall into 3 buckets. You've got administrative work, creative work, and technical sort of work, and they can totally overlap. But let's just take the admin one for a moment, because I feel like this is easier for a lot of people to move into, especially if they're completely new to working digitally in any way. Even if the only thing that you could do, which is rare in today's very tech savvy and internet savvy generations, but even if the only thing that you could do was create a Microsoft Word document and turn it into a PDF, for example, there is someone in the world that doesn't know how to do that, and you have to come from that perspective that exactly, or doesn't want to do it. Yeah, there's all these different things. So whatever it is that you're coming to the table with, there is someone out there who will pay you for those skills. So it's really about owning what you already know and then bringing it online. And the more you learn, the more you can earn in this career. So that's also the cool thing. You might start entry level rates and you might end up on $100 an hour in a year or two's time. So there's so much space to grow in it. And there's so much space to play with what you're offering in terms of your services, with the types of people you want to work with. So for me, especially if you're someone who's like a multi-passionate person, there's so much space to just, again, bring you to the table, start with what you've got and grow with that, and take that with you anywhere in the world. Compared to remote jobs, which, while remote, a lot of them may be geographically limited to certain areas, or, still having to show up at certain times. You have that autonomy to work at times that suit you. We have a lot of neurodivergent folks who move into this work as well. And I think it's really accessible for people like that because you get to work at times that work best for you. For example, I work really good in the nighttime. I'll stay up all night working and everyone thinks I'm weird, but I'm like, I get my best work done and nobody's telling me when I can and can't do that. So it's accessible. It's low barrier to entry. It's really fun work and there's so much variety in it. And you really do have potential to, like I said, learn and earn more.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you're talking about with neurodivergent people as well. Cause I feel like I feel like we're all different, right? Like we all function differently. We all have different minds. We all think differently. And I think it's really important to, rather than trying to like fit into molds or boxes, to find things that we can really thrive in. And I think that if your brain just thinks differently, or you work best, like you said, at night, it's like finding a career that allows you to do that is a really amazing thing, rather than like trying to force yourself into like a 9 to 5, which, I mean, quite honestly, I think the Monday to Friday 9 to 5 works for very few of us. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so for somebody who's maybe thinking like, okay, this sounds really cool, I would love like all these things, do you have any tips for like getting started as a VA?
Yeah, I mean, it's really about identifying what those existing skills are and not disregarding your previous experience in the offline world, because it's so very relevant. And also then looking at, if I was to say right now, here's what you do to get started, I would say get a sheet of paper, put 3 columns. In the first column, you want to put down, what am I good at? And I don't want you to limit it to only what you're good at in your professional life. Are you good at baking? Are you good at, because it's going to start informing your interests as well. Then you've got, what do I enjoy? So then from that list of what you're good at, only bring the stuff you enjoy, because I always say there's no point building a business by design if you're going to be doing stuff you hate doing. Like you might as well get a job you hate doing. It's the same thing. So if you're going to make the effort and make the leap, because it is effort and it is a leap to start your own business, you might as well start it on the right foot. You might as well start it on the right foot, doing things that actually light you up. And I just want to make one distinction here. A lot of people will say, follow your passion and the money will come. I don't subscribe to that. I subscribe to follow your interests and let them evolve and change over time. But as long as you're interested and you're engaged, you're going to find the work enjoyable. Finding your passion can be a really intimidating task for a lot of people. I find I don't feel like all of us have this one thing that we're going to do for the rest of our lives. So, look at your interests. Look at your interests. What do you actually enjoy out of those things you're good at? And then start to look at, and you can literally take almost any business that exists right now as a model for this, and just think of, you do a little spider diagram if you want, and think of all the moving parts that happen in that business and where your skills and interests can align with that. So these businesses that you're going to look at, they might be ones that actually already identify with that. So again, let's go back to that yoga enthusiast. Let's say you're really good at yoga, you love yoga, so you've got 2 things right there. You're good at customer service as well. So maybe you want to be supporting a yoga instructor's Facebook community management, that kind of thing. So you start to branch out and realize all these tiny little things are things that can be outsourced. So really just doing like a brain dump of like, okay, X, Y, Z, a yoga studio, they need this. Where could I pick up pieces from that? I'm probably not demonstrating it well. It's a better visual. But looking at what your existing skills are, what you enjoy doing out of that, and then how that can meet a market need is a good place to start. Because I think one of the pitfalls that a lot of people fall into in this work is moving into it with this idea of, I'm good at a lot of stuff and I want to help everybody, which is a noble cause. But it's really hard to do that, because when you're speaking to everybody, you're ultimately speaking to nobody. People want to feel spoken to. They want to hire people in their business who speak their language, who understand their business model. And that comes with a premium as well. So you're going to get more money with that as well.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah. I love that. And then once we've kind of identified what we're interested in, what our skills are, where should people go to like apply for things? Like, do you recommend Upwork? Are there other sites that are good for that?
I'm kind of anti these platforms. Thinking of the right words. And I'm not saying don't use these platforms. I'm saying don't use them as a main avenue, because what we've found in, 30,000 people is enough for me to have gained some data on what works and what doesn't work and what works more effectively. And what we've found over the years is that what seems to work more effectively is the networking. It is the building the personal brand. It is, building authority around your area, your niche, your services. And referrals ultimately are the backbone of a really successful VA business. Now, does it harm to have a profile on these platforms? And if you see something, apply for it? No, of course it doesn't. But I think taking a really proactive approach instead of the more traditional job market approach, which is applying for opportunities, it's rather creating opportunities. I would really recommend, hanging out where your ideal clients are hanging out. Make sure you're providing some value, networking behind the scenes. You can do things like getting in the media. There's plenty of different ways that you can sort of boost your authority in your area. And oftentimes it's just asking for the sale. So example of this, a really simple, quick tip that a lot of people don't do. Especially if you have identified the services you can offer, maybe you start putting them into practice in your own business. For example, if you want to be an Instagram manager, your Instagram's going to be shit hot, right? That's your portfolio piece. You want to be a web designer, your website's going to be awesome. You want to be a writer, you start a blog, you have this portfolio piece to bring forward to validate what you're saying you can do. And then you can go onto social media because you've been networking in the right places, go onto LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever it is that your audience is hanging out. And you can literally say, I have availability to take on one client next month doing XYZ. DM me. Like, you need to let people know you're in business as well. I think there's this, it's not a build it and they will come scenario, right? You need to be very proactive. And that's a really simple thing you can do. You can apply that to multiple areas of your business. I would post on social media and say, I want to get on 20 podcasts this month. And then people are going to DM, here's how I can bring value. Here's what I can do. Here's how I can back up what I can do. And it's kind of like, if you ever go in the United States, I feel like this is a United States thing. You drive around and you see like motels that have a sign like vacancy, no vacancy. It's the same thing. You need to tell people you are open for business. And so just simply that action on a regular basis, paired with the networking, paired with, creating niche specific content, paired with asking for referrals, and also then providing a great service for your existing clients in order for referrals to actually take place, is really effective. So I know, sorry, there's a long tangent, but yeah.
No. I mean, that's like so many golden nuggets in there, like really, really helpful information. So appreciate the tangent. And yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with those platforms you're talking about, but I feel like just hearing your example of like, spending days and hours of your time for like $5 is like, I'm just kind of like, we're worth more than that. And I think one of the things that's challenging about those platforms is like, you kind of have to get the reviews, right? It's like people are not going to just pay you $100 an hour when you're like brand new on the platform. But I feel like if you can build your own Instagram or your own website or maybe both and like showcase to somebody what you can do, what your skills are, I feel like they're going to be much more open to the idea of like paying you more right off the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the examples I always give is if somebody came to me and said, I want to work with you. I'm a general admin VA. I want to work with you. My rate is $15, $20 an hour. And then I look at their profile and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know this person, and then someone else approaches me and says, hey, I've noticed that you are not showing up on Instagram in the way that you should. And I work with, queer entrepreneurs who are course creators and my rate is $35. I'm hiring that person because I'm like, you get me. I don't need to explain everything to you. So, doing your research about the types of people you want to work with and really tailoring your messaging as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that just like with the general job market, we like miss in a big way. It's like people just create like one cover letter that they change like the name on it and the company and one resume and they just like send it out to all these companies. And then they're like, why isn't nobody calling me back? And it's like, what have you done to demonstrate that you're like a really great fit for this? Like, do you know anything about the company? Do you know anything about the position? And I feel like, today's market is like competitive, right? And I think especially to get a job that we're excited about, that pays well, it's like we have to show to the person like, hey, I know something about you and here's why I'm a great fit for you. And that person's going to be willing to pay a higher rate, just like you said.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note as well that with niching or niching, however you want to call it, we can argue about that later. But
I say niching. I don't know about you.
Oh, you do? Good.
Yeah.
You're in the good crew.
Yeah, I'm Canadian. I say Zed too, so I'm extra cool.
With niching, I find that a lot of people sometimes are concerned that it's going to limit them, right? I'm closing the gap so small that I'm not going to find anyone. And I think the little bit of reprieve that you can have with that in the VA space is that you don't need to niche necessarily by industry or by even the type of job or role that the entrepreneur or business is fulfilling. You can also niche by values, which we're finding is really effective in the current market. So for example, I really want to work with people who in their business in some way are impacting the environment positively. So that leaves scope for like, well, this could be a construction company that does sustainable building, or it could be a life coach who helps people with, I don't know, you know what I mean? So it really does leave the scope a bit wider. If you're feeling like niching by an industry is difficult, you can also niche by values.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's really important to like look at our values. Like, I think, people are going to do what they're going to do. And I think everyone's kind of entitled to their own beliefs and the way they operate their business. But I think there's naturally going to be things that we align with more. And it's like, again, if we're building lifestyle by design, business by design, it's like, let's get clear on like who we're excited to work with and why we're excited to work with them. And if it's like, hey, I want to work with like female entrepreneurs, or I want to work with an all male team, or I want to work with people who are giving back in some way, it's like, let's identify that so that we can really feel aligned with the people we're supporting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that. I want to switch gears and ask a little bit about, just kind of your lifestyle with your business, because I know it's a lot to be like moving around all the time and whatnot. So I'm curious for you a little bit about like, balancing productivity, like running a business while also traveling. Because I think one of the things we found is in the early days when we were making less money and we were just taking on like, projects here and there, we had a lot more like, oh, well, there's nothing to do today. Let's go explore. And now that it's like, we've more professional jobs, built a business, that type of thing. It's like, okay, well, like stuff's got to get done. So, we got to figure out how to do this balance. So I'm curious for you how that looks in terms of like managing, getting work done while also exploring.
Yeah, I think very similarly to you that in the beginning days, there was a lot more time to just sort of frolic around and enjoy the surroundings. And while I definitely do still enjoy my surroundings, I think I've slowed down. And I think for the work, but also, we adopted a dog here in Mexico. Like there's things that just have naturally slowed us down, but the business becoming more of a serious thing and requiring more attention. And managing a team now, I manage a team around the world. And so that, having to align with them for calls and stuff like that has required us to slow down so that, I can be more present and I can be then actually take intentional time off. So for example, I recently went to Canada of all places for a week where I actually completely switched off. And people were like, Hannah, you're always on vacation. I'm like, no, I need a vacation for my vacation. I'm working. Like I live here most of the time and then I'm starting to take vacation. So I've definitely slowed down to the point that I'm questioning if I could be called a digital nomad anymore, but semantics aside, I'm based here and I take trips when I need to recharge more. That said, there are certain things I do. Like I said, I work better in the evenings. So I do dedicate like certain evenings for working and then certain evenings for hanging out with my wife or going out with friends or that kind of thing. So having a more structured schedule that works for me. And I don't mean like when I say having a structured schedule, it doesn't need to align to anybody else's idea of what a good structure is really, because mine works very much for me. And I definitely recommend creating one that works for you too. But it is about having one where you can hold yourself accountable for like, I will actually get this done at this time because this is when I work good. Or I will actually go see people at this time because I've already accounted for this another time. Or chunking your clients into certain days, like Monday and Tuesday I work with client 1, Wednesdays I work with client 2, Thursday I work with client 3, and Fridays are mine, like that, or working the weekends so that you can go do things in the week. So it really is about creating a structure that works for you. But I think the overall sort of message is that slowing down has enabled me to build more impact, build more wealth, and ultimately to enjoy the time that I do have exploring at a higher level as well.
Yeah, for sure. I feel very aligned with that. I feel like we're very much in the same position. And I have Digital Nomad in my personal Instagram bio. And I was recently thinking, I feel like I should take this out because I'm like more of an expat at this point. Like we have a home base as well. We've been here for a year and a half at this point, almost 2 years. It's like we're planning to continue basing here for now. I don't think it's forever, but we've really enjoyed like kind of slowing down. Like we did a number of years where it was like, a month was a long time to be in a place. And it's really it's really hard to strike that balance of like, I'm focusing on work and I'm getting stuff done and I'm feeling really good about the quality that's coming out of it. And then I'm also like getting a chance to get to know this destination that I'm in, because it kind of sucks to go somewhere really cool, like to be in like Puerto Vallarta, for example, where you are, and be like, oh, I've like haven't got to explore any of the amazing beaches or go to any of the cool restaurants or like go to any of the amazing events or live music or whatever it is that you want to do. It's kind of like, well, why am I here if I'm not exploring? But then it's a really slippery slope of like, hey, I'm going on like this beach trip and this beach trip and I'm doing this thing. And oh crap, I haven't checked my emails for 6 days and like business is slipping.
Yeah, that happens sometimes still. So it's all a trial and error, but I totally agree with you there. And I think that staying in places longer as well. I don't know how it is for you, but what I have found, which I'm actively working on, is that I found that, I'm here in Puerto Vallarta and I've been here, I want to say 3 or 4 months now, and I haven't gone out as much as I should because I'm like, oh, we're going to be here for a year. So I've got time. And that's what people do when they live in places that they consider their home, right? Like you don't explore your home. So I'm like, no, I need to make an active decision to do this. So, again, allocating time for that is really important.
Yeah, for sure. We like to kind of like we've had the same thing, and we just like did this hike we've wanted to do like basically since we moved to Querétaro. We just did it a couple of weeks ago. Mind you, like when we moved here, I was very pregnant and then we had a baby, then we had a newborn, there's like excuses and reasons why we haven't done it, but we finally got out and we're like, why did we wait so long? But something we did kind of prior to pregnancy, small infant, that type of thing, was we'd actually like we'd be like, what are our top things to do here? And like write it on a piece of paper, put it on the wall, kind of bucket list style. Because it's like, okay, if we have 3 months or 6 months, but whatever we have, let's be really intentional about like this weekend we're doing X thing or we're going to X restaurant or whatever. Because it is easy when you do have time to like also just get in your rhythm and go to the same places constantly or not explore. We experienced this in Panama. We thought we were going to spend a year there, and then the pandemic happened and we decided to leave. And there's like some of the top attractions in Panama City that we have not done.
Actually, what's interesting is you mentioned the pandemic. I feel like the pandemic also slowed down a lot of the longer term nomads. It was a natural slowdown. It was a natural like, oh, maybe we needed this to focus on our business a little.
Totally. Yeah. We found that it was like, well, we can't go anywhere. So I guess we'll just like stay put and like focus on other things.
Yeah, totally.
I'm curious on that note, how you choose destinations. Like do you and your wife have like a process in terms of like choosing a destination, how long you stay there, that type of thing?
Yeah, it's a very intense process actually. So we get lots of Post-it notes and then we put down like we'll always have places in mind, right? So there'll be like 4 to 5 places that we're thinking of. And we tend to go back to places we know, or we know we're going to be similar to places we like right now, because we kind of got the vibe for what we like. And we'll put the names of those places on the top row of Post-it notes. And then we have like our priorities. So our priorities are conveniences. We're really big on like, is there good food delivery? Are there Ubers? Can we get around with ease? I don't drive, for example, so that, transportation is a big one for me. Then for our specific case, like, is it LGBTQ friendly? Because like, in the past, we've gone to places where I've made concessions and like, all right, we'll be discreet, but I'm like, I'm at an age where I don't want to have to practice discretion to be who I am anymore. So yeah. So now it's like, is it friendly enough that we can live there and hold hands and not be looked at funny? Cool. That's one. I think the quality of the food, like, so we're vegan, so like high quality, healthy foods in abundance there. A recent addition, do they have dog parks? Is it dog friendly? It's definitely shifted over the years from like what cool bars are in town to like, is there a good physiotherapist? So then we have these things,
like,
and then
this is being in your 30s.
Exactly. Nomads in the 30s. And so then we kind of rank these places on a 1 to however many points we have. And then we tally up at the end. And I think it's the place with the lowest amounts of points is the winner. So like, and it always comes out as Thailand, but then we never go, which is weird. It just feels so far away. I used to live there, and I think with a dog now, it feels hard to like, she has to go in cargo. She's a big dog. So, but Mexico's a close second. So that's where we've landed.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. It's nice to hear like somebody else's process. So, and I just really resonate with like things shifting. Like the first trip I was mentioning earlier that we did in 2011, it's like we were recent, I think we were like 22 or something like that. And we'd recently graduated from university, and it was like, what hostels have the best vibe? Like, do they have bars there? Do they do like bar crawls? And now I'm like, can I like push a stroller? Is there like other people like that have kids? I'm like, is it too noisy? Because I'm a grandma. I go to bed at like 9:30, 10.
Yes, too. Yeah, that's funny.
I think it's cool to see like the evolution personally though, and I think it's really normal as you like go through different chapters of life to be looking for different things. And it's nice to like, acknowledge those with yourself or your partner, whoever you travel with, and like be able to be like, okay, what are our priorities? And I think it's cool because it leads us to different destinations, right? As we're like in different chapters of life.
Yeah. And I also think what's interesting is to revisit places you've visited maybe years ago and to see how you relate to them differently at this different stage in your life. So for example, we're going to Colombia in August, and I haven't been there since 2017, and I've changed a lot since then. And what was important to me there is going to, then is very different to what would be important to me now. So it'll be interesting to see places with this new lens as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually funny that you mentioned that, because we just went to Colombia at the beginning of 2023. And I guess the last time we went to Barranquilla for Carnival in 2020, like right before the pandemic. But prior to that, like the last time we'd been in Medellin was 2014. Like, we're not working remotely, staying in hostels. Like, we walked by one of the hostels we stayed in, and I was like, gross. Like, I would literally, like, somebody could not pay me to stay there now.
I'm always laughing. I'm like, did I get bougie or did I just get older?
Yeah, I know, right? I know I used to be so critical of my parents, and obviously they're still in a different category with everything from me, but I used to be so critical of them of like, oh, you're such prudes with like where you stay and like blah, blah, blah. And now I'm like, okay, I kind of am getting it. I'm like, don't want to stay in that like mixed dorm with like 16 other people. I'm good.
Nope.
Amazing. Well, I'm curious, what's next for you guys? You guys staying in PV for a while? What's kind of the travel plans? What do you guys have on your radar?
It's a question mark right now. It's something that we're actively discussing. We're definitely staying here. We've got a year-long rental, which is the first I've had in many years. So that's a commitment in itself. And then, we have residency here, so we'll probably stick around for the next couple of years. I think we have 2 years left on that. And then we can decide if we want to do permanent. I think there's just a question mark right now about aging parents and grandparents in Europe and whether or not we want to go spend maybe a year or two there before heading back. I'm in the process of obtaining my Italian citizenship through Ancestry. So that would give me access to the European Union again, because Brexit sucks as a UK person. So yeah, there's a discussion around that really. And I think that's also another age specific thing. Yeah, Mexico and or Europe, something like that.
Amazing. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I'm curious, where can people go to follow along with your journey, Hannah, or maybe learn about you, or if they want to become a VA, learn from you, all that good stuff?
Yeah, sure. My profiles everywhere are Digital Nomad Kit. That's KIT. On Instagram, on Threads, which is new as of a few days.
I'm still resisting it. I'm not sure about it.
Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun. I'm hooked. Yeah, Digital Nomad Kit, digitalnomadkit.com. If you want to join the 5-day challenge, I know we touched on it. We run those every 2 months. So depending on when this goes live, there will be one coming up at some point. Totally free, really good introduction if you are interested in pursuing something like this, or at least experimenting and seeing if it could be a good fit for you.
Amazing. Thanks so much for your time today. This has been really awesome.
Thank you for having me. It's been great to connect.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you want more, make sure to check out The World Wanders Insider, available on Patreon at patreon.com/theworldwanderers.
For show notes, head over to theworldwanderers.com. Find us on social media at The World Wanderers Podcast, and join the private Facebook community at World Wanderers, a community for travelers.
You can always get in touch with us at info@theworldwanderers.com. And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps us find new listeners.
See you next time.